All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Key to Redemption, episode 6, class number 4. With this, Bezras Hashem, we're going to conclude the Dvar Malchus, which is still related to last week, Parshas Naso. We are holding at chapter 11. Okay, so yesterday we pointed out how the Parshas Naso contains within it, the parsha of last week, contains within it all three elements of the newness of Mashiach's times, of the Messianic age, beginning with the trigger. The trigger is the revelation of the essence of the soul, which then triggers the revelation of the essence of the Torah, which then goes ahead, which then affects and triggers, because the Torah is the blueprint of the world, triggers the essence of the world to be revealed. And as a result of that, we have a new world, which is, as the verse says, the new world, the new heavens and the new earth that I am creating, referring to God's very essence being expressed in the physical world, which that is a derivative of God squeezing the Torah out and revealing the deepest novel ideas of Torah that in ways that is like beyond ever to have been conceived. And all of that is triggered by the soul of Mashiach, who is the root of all souls and therefore connects to the quintessence of every soul, what we call the Yechida of the soul, the deepest unified state of the soul, where the soul is unified with God, and that is revealed. And as we learned yesterday, as we reveal and trigger that, we intensify the revelation of Mashiach's soul, which in turn reveals all this power in the entire, and the unity of God in the entire, reaches even the farthest, most ungodly and darkest of places. Even over there, the ultimate Hashem and Hashem's truth is fully pronounced. So that's what we learned yesterday, how it was, and he showed us how it's all there in the parsha, since the giving of the Torah happens on Shavuos. So the week after the giving of the Torah is when we focus on extracting all the new light that has not yet been drawn out of the Torah. That's what we learned, and that's why it's all visible in the parsha of last week, which is the Parshas Naso. Now he's going to show us how these three ideas, the essence of the Torah, which impacts the essence of the world, which is triggered by the essence of the Jewish people, which comes out in the Jewish unity, because the unity is what, such a level of unity can only come when we expose our essence. All these things, three powerful ideas, are also to be found in the chapter of the ethics of the fathers that we study on the Shabbos after Shavuos, which was the first chapter of ethics of the fathers, the first chapter of Pirkei Avos. So let's see. Pirkei Avos, and that's very, very obvious. But particularly, where do we find not just the renewal of the giving of the Torah, but the extraction, the opening of the Torah that is done by the recipients? Because once the Torah is given, now we start to unpack the Torah, to take it, to reveal its juice, all the inner hidden content that's in it. And there's two levels of that. First, we have all of our revelations, which has been taking place, the human mind probing the infinite mind, the infinite wisdom. And after the human mind reaches its completion of whatever God said that we should extract, and that has been the whole body of Torah that has been revealed, then God himself extracts what he can extract, which is the infinite wisdom, which is going to be the wisdom of Mashiach. Just a possibility, I'm just going to say something. One of the great worries, as we mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned in this class, is that machines are becoming way smarter than people. They're not there yet, but they might be there very soon, and then they're going to overtake us and become trillion times smarter than we are. There's an interesting thing. And it's very possible, the way it seems like, but that's only on the premise that human intelligence is meant to stay where we are now. But here is the wild idea. We are expecting the coming of Mashiach momentarily, and human intelligence will expand exponentially. So it's very possible that the answer to the advance of machines at enormous speeds that are just impossible for us to comprehend, well, the human mind will race into expansion, and it will leap in exponential growth once Mashiach starts teaching Torah and opens up our minds and plugs our brains in directly into God's mind. And it could be, from that perspective, the human mind will always be just 3 steps ahead of any computer. And in that sense, the human being will not become the secondary being in the world, but he will still be obviously, as the ultimate servant of God, will be maintain the place where humans have been from the beginning of time. That's just a thought related to what we're learning over here. So let's take a look, because what we're saying? We're saying that there is going to be an enormous power of creative intelligence into the world, a download that is simply an infinite download of wisdom, and it's going to go on and on and on and on. So once we load the human mind with whole new wisdom that has never been within the cosmic order, once that's downloaded, then we might be way ahead of computers, and it will take computers quite a while to catch up. And the computers, what will they do? They will do all the chores that are necessary. Everything will become automated. Literally everything will become automated. And we will be able to restore our minds for what our minds should be occupied with. And that is not trying to figure out how to make a living or how to do other simple tasks that a computer could do. Our mind should be investigating, researching, and getting to know our boundless, infinite creator. So that's a cool idea. In any case, here we continue. So where do we see in Pirkei Avos the newness of the Torah? Let's begin with that. The new download of the Torah. He says, well, Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers, which begins with these words. Moshe received the Torah at Sinai. He transmitted it to Joshua, to Yeshua. Yeshua transmitted it to the elders to the prophets. So first of all, we're talking about the giving of the Torah, which is what we're talking about now, the new giving of the Torah. But the emphasis is not on the giver, the emphasis is on the recipient, us receiving it. But not only receiving it as it is, but receiving it, owning it, digesting it, making it ours to the point that we can innovate in it. It becomes so much our blood, it becomes so much our energy that we can innovate in it. Where do we see that? Because the Mishnah says Moshe received the Torah and he gave it over. It's no more just God gave it over, he gave it over. Because when he absorbed it, he made it his. Then he passed it to Joshua. Yeshua absorbed it, Yeshua made it his. Now it's Yeshua's, and he added his flavor to it, which God wants. It's not adding anything. It's opening up. Each and every one of us has the ability to open when we study Torah in a God-fearing way, in the way that God wants us, with a complete submission to Hashem's will. Then God gifts us the ability to be able to extract with our own minds various different ideas that no one has ever seen. And so it gets passed on from generation to generation, from person to person. And God is waiting for our innovations, and these innovations become part of the Torah. And that's what's emphasized in this Mishnah. So we're back to Shavuos again. God gave us the Torah, and now we begin to unpack it. The Shabbos after Shavuos, we're finding the innovations and more innovation and more innovation. Okay. That's, however, still talking about the Torah as it is today. Just we keep on expounding and finding more revelation but we're still probing with our human minds. What's the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate objective? Ultimate objective is that after we extract what we can extract, God extracts. And that's going to be the Torah of Mashiach that God will reveal in the future to Mashiach. Well, where do we see that in the Ethics of the Fathers? So the Rebbe says, again, this is all genius. The Rebbe says, well, That's right there as well. If you don't see it, you're not looking. There is a custom. Before we begin saying the first chapter of Ethics of the Fathers, we make we say an introduction statement, and that is a Mishnah, which is not part of the Ethics of the Fathers. A Talmudic statement, a Mishnah statement, it's not part of the Ethics of the Fathers. It comes from a different tractate, a different volume of Talmud, and the tractate Sanhedrin. And over there it says all of Israel has a portion of the world to come. Kol Yisrael yesh lo chelek l'olam haba. All of Israel has a portion of the world to come. And so far, kulam tzadikim, because everybody's considered righteous and fine. And the sages say, and when we say the world to come, we don't mean the afterlife. What we mean is the resurrection. After the coming of Mashiach and the resurrection, that's what it means in this statement, the world to come, that everybody has a portion. So what do we see from here? Suddenly, we see that Ethics of the Fathers is connected to the future, because we're talking as an introduction. And especially, see, but what the Rebbe is teaching us is to take everything so seriously. If we say this verse, hear this. If we say a statement, okay, that's the custom. All of Israel has a portion of the world to come, because and we bring a verse to support that. And then, without interrupting, we immediately open up Ethics of the Fathers and we begin. Moshe received the Torah at Sinai and he handed it over to Yeshua. So it obviously is the Torah as it is connected to the redemption, to the future redemption. Why? Because we're not making, we're flowing right in. We're speaking about the redemption, we're speaking about the future, and we're speaking about the Torah. So it adds up. Which Torah are we talking about? The Torah of the future. The Torah that's going to be revealed at the time of Mashiach, and primarily at the time of the resurrection. And that's why all the righteous people are going to come back into this world, because as much Torah as they've been learning down here in this world and continuing to learn in the heavenly academy where souls go after they pass on and they get wisdom, as great as that wisdom is, it still doesn't come close to the knowledge of that Mashiach will reveal. So they will come back into bodies to study Torah from Mashiach. Well, so that's obviously there. So we don't only have the innovation of Torah, but we have the time of the redemption. So we're talking about the Torah of the redemption. Now, even more clear, that we can see that we're speaking about particularly the Torah that is going to be revealed at the time of the redemption. The Rebbe derives that because there is a custom that when we conclude the chapter in the Ethics of the Fathers, we sign off by saying another statement from another Mishnah that's not part of the Ethics of the Fathers. In other words, and every Shabbos during the summer months, when we say a chapter in the Ethics of the Fathers, in Pirkei Avos, we sandwich it between two foreign Mishnahs, which means Talmudic statements that are not part of Ethics of the Fathers. So one we say before that I mentioned earlier about everybody having a portion into the world to come, and the one that we say in the end. What do we say at the end? It also comes from elsewhere. Here it says, Rabbi Hananya ben Akashia Omer, one of the great sages, Rabbi Hananya ben Akashia, says that God wanted, Ratzah Kadosh Baruch Hu l'zakas es Yisrael, God wanted to bring merit to the Jewish people, and therefore he increased them by giving them a lot of Torah and a lot of mitzvahs. In other words, the Torah and the mitzvahs should not be seen as a burden, as obligations, but they should be seen as manners and merits in which we can become extremely meritorious through them. And he brings a verse. It says, Hashem desired for the sake of his righteousness, Hashem chafetz l'man tzidkoi, yagdil Torah v'yadir, for the Torah to increase and to become mighty. God wants the proliferation and the growth and the full strengthening of the Torah. The Torah should grow and grow and grow till it becomes a mighty force, unstoppable force. And with that, we conclude every week the reading of the Ethics of the Fathers by adding this mission. So the Rebbe takes the last words where it says Yagdil Torah, that the ultimate objective is for Torah to grow and to increase and become mighty. So it describes that the type of Torah study that this verse is alluding to, the Torah growing, is referring to when you're a certain method of learning Torah. We can study Torah in various different ways. Basic Torah study is so that we can know how to behave. You can't live according to halacha, according to Jewish requirement, unless you study and you know the laws. So that's the basic way of learning. And then you can learn because you want to be a rabbi, which means you want to really understand the law in a very deep way and really get it. So then you can't just learn superficially. You got to learn, spend hours and hours and hours delving deep into it. But all of that is still in order to be able to figure out the action, how to live. The Torah is the manual. You want to understand the manual of how to live. But then there's a different type of learning, where you're learning Torah and you're not expecting to gain anything, any instruction. You're just learning Torah for the sake of indulgence in Torah, indulging your mind in God's wisdom. And it's not meant for you to learn something of how to apply and how to live. That's not the objective. Because then if you're learning Torah with any type of agenda, you want to get something out of it, then it's not about the Torah. The Torah is a means to an end for something else. Your main objective is to get somewhere else. You want to be able to do the mitzvahs properly. Studying Torah to be able to do the mitzvah properly. You want to be able to fulfill your obligation in this world. You're learning Torah to be able to do that. But we're talking about Torah for the sake of Torah. And that's the real meaning of increasing the Torah. In other words, you study subjects that you know are completely irrelevant to human life. But yet, you're so curious to know what God thinks about this. And you can hypothesize and go on and on and on and on and learn things that have absolutely, it's called not halacha l'maisa. It's not about action, about knowing the way of behavior. It's just abstract kind of a learning. That's the Torah study that it is spoken about in the conclusion of the Mishnah when it says Yagdol Torah v'yad. So the Rebbe says, hold it. When are we going to study Torah in that manner, where we're going to gain such a level of Torah understanding that our entire indulgence of study of Torah is going to be pure indulgence, pure, holy, positive indulgence? We usually look at indulgence as bad, but this is the ultimate indulgence. To indulge and to preciously delight ourselves with the infinite wisdom of God. That's going to be in the Torah of Mashiach. Why? Because now when we study Torah, most people still need to learn in order to improve our ways. Because our ways are not yet perfect, because there's so many details of Torah we don't know. So therefore, we're still busy learning. And even when we get to learn parts of Torah and we get to understand of how we should behave, how we can do all the mitzvahs and all the commandments, what happens to us is certain information goes in, and then they linger for a while. Then we take in new information. And a lot of times the old information, we say gold, it goes in from one ear, goes out the other ear. So we keep on losing. So we have to keep on reviewing. So we can spend an entire lifetime studying where the intention is not the study itself, but the intention is the outcome of it. However, in the time of Mashiach, our minds are going to be so powerful that we're also going to have enormous retention capacity. And as a result of that, we're going to have increased memory, and we're going to study the Torah one time to know all the law and all the behavior, and we're going to get that down pat, especially with our super minds that we're going to have then. What's going to happen? Again, our minds will really expand. And with our super minds that we will have then, we will be able to study all of the law, which now a person can spend a lifetime gaining that information. We'll be able to get that in 6 months, let's say. I'm just giving an example. And we will memorize this forever. So what kind of Torah study are we going to learn after that? That's when we are going to learn Torah just for the entertainment of the Torah study, just as an experience. And so since the Mishnah that we study at the end of Pirkei Avos is talking about Torah study on that level, the Rebbe says it must be talking about the future Torah. In other words, when we want to know which Torah is it talking about, the Torah of now or the Torah of the future? Torah of now is more applied Torah. We're learning it so that we can apply it and implement it in our behaviors. So it's not Torah for the sake of Torah. But the ultimate study of Torah for the sake of Torah is when the questioning you're asking I think that, see, what happened is the Talmud says that there was a question. It was like he was asking on hypothesis, on hypotheticals that were really humorous because they were things that were never going to happen. And he asked, what would be the law? And it wanted to be dismissed. And they said, no, it's actually good because God wants us to study Torah and know every possibility, even if it's not applicable. And the sages bring this verse, Yagdil Torah v'yadir. God wanted that the Torah should increase. So we see that type of study is when are we going to have that type of study? In Mashiach's days. So what do we see from here? So let's put all the information together. In the beginning of the Ethics of the Fathers, we're talking about the Torah being renewed to the world. That's why we say Moshe receives the Torah and he hands it over. So we're talking about new Torah, but the Torah in a way that we're unpacking it, we're extracting. In the extraction itself, is it the extraction of today or is it the extraction of the future? So the Rebbe derives it from the introduction to Pirkei Avos and from the conclusion of Pirkei Avos that we do every week, but also on the first week of Pirkei Avos, we see that it's talking about future. Why? Because in the introduction it's talking about all, which it means the future, and in the end it's talking about a type of Torah study that we're going to most people are only going to achieve that kind of level of Torah study only in the future. So therefore, here you got it. In Pirkei Avos, it's right up there. This renewal and this Chiddush of Torah is right on there. Now, since going back to the idea, now we have to find the next point. There is, just like we unpack the Torah, we have to unpack all the wisdom that's in creation, all the way to the godly light that's in creation. Remember? And that happens automatically. Why? Because when you extract the light of the Torah, it helps reveal the wisdom, the hidden knowledge of the world, of nature itself, the scientific. And where do we see that? Also in Pirkei Avos, because the Mishnah, immediately after it speaks about Moshe receiving the Torah, the next Mishnah, this is Mishnah number 2, in Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 1, the second Mishnah, it starts with the words, on 3 things the world stands, on 3 pillars. So we're talking about holding up the world, because again, we're not talking about Torah just as it is, for a few spiritual people, but rather Torah as it impacts life on earth. The world has to be, and there's 2 Mishnahs that deal with the world. In the first chapter of Ethics of the Fathers, the second Mishnah in the chapter that says the world stands on 3 things, and the last Mishnah in Ethics of the Fathers of the first chapter, it says over there, on 3 things the world is kayam, the world is fortified. Ala emes, on truth, ala shalom, and on peace. What is it? Ala emes, ala shalom, let's see where we find it over here. I mentioned it. Oh, on judgment, din, on judgment, on truth, and on peace. Okay. So again, here's what we see. Again, we're not just dealing with a innovation in Torah, in the realm of Torah, but it's carrying over into the world. Finally, so we have the newness of the Torah, we have the newness in the world, but the most important part is what triggers it all. What we were learning yesterday, the trigger and the cause of it all is when we bring out news of our own consciousness. That's when we need to expose ourselves, when we draw forth our deepest point of our soul and lead that to the surface, become conscious of our superconscious, then all this is now revealed in the world. So where do you see that in the Ethics of the Fathers? So he says that over here as well. In the introduction to the Ethics of the Fathers that we mentioned before, it says all of Israel has a portion to the world to come because everybody is righteous. Now that idea which is what? Which doesn't differentiate between person and person, which means we're not looking individually at every individual based on your own personal achievement and merit. We're looking at the unifier of everyone together. That is an indication, as we discussed earlier, of the essence of the soul, because in the essence of the soul, which is a spark of God, over there, everybody is one. Over there is the oneness. So then when we say everybody is going to have a portion to the world to come, obviously we're exposing this essence. So right over here is where you see the trigger that triggers it all. Secondly, if that's in the beginning, in the introductory Mishnah. In the concluding Mishnah, the after Mishnah that we discussed earlier, where it speaks about the increasement of Torah, so the Rebbe says over there, it also got the essence of the soul. See? It also has the essence of the soul written all over it. Which one? What does it say? Sorry, what does it say? It says that we spoke about learning Torah in a way, Yagdil Torah ve'yadir, increasing the Torah and strengthening the Torah, right? So we just mentioned that that's referring to a very high type of learning. When you're learning Torah, not for any external benefit, even to be able to live by these teachings, but that's still called external to the learning just for the sake of the learning, and the purity of the learning, right? That's a very high level. And today's days, who achieves such a level? Only very, very great people. The average people are not there yet at all. However, the Rebbe brings fascinating that the very same verse is also applying to the most amateur type of learning. That means that in the same verse, implying Torah study, and that the point over here is to proliferate, and to increase Torah study, there are two interpretations in the sages what that means. One interpretation is what we discussed about before, is at the highest end of Torah study, the highest level. The other one is at the lowest level, the most elementary Torah study. Why? Because the sages derive from this verse a very important rule. And that is, when it comes to children in elementary school, there are no laws of competition. Generally, there's certain laws regarding competitors. If I have a business, and I have over here, and I have people coming to me, and I'm the grocery store right over here in the neighborhood. So you're now going to go and open up across the street a grocery store, and draw my customers away. That's forbidden. If you want to start a grocery, go to a different neighborhood. Don't do it in a way that you're right across the street as being a competition. There are laws regarding that. To find out all the details, you got to speak. It depends on a lot of things, and you got to speak to your local rabbi and get the halachic authority of exactly when it applies, how, what, where, and when. But the Talmud says there's one business that it doesn't apply to, where there is no restrictions in competition. Someone opens up a school for children and he's teaching, and suddenly a different guy across the street opens up also another school, and now it's a competing school. That we learn out from this verse. It says, God desired for his righteousness, because of his righteousness, he desired to increase the Torah. And competition will actually do well, because it's going to force both teachers to do the best they can to outdo each other. They each one want the kids to come to their school. So it's going to put them, here the competition will be beneficial, because it's going to end up that the children are going to get a much better education, because they're going to have to perform, or else they'll be out of business. The other guy will take away the business. So what does the Rebbe say? We're talking about what type of learning? The most basic learning, little children that are just learning the basic of Torah. That same verse is talking about scholars who are learning Torah above everybody else, the highest level. People who are learning Torah, they know all the knowledge of Torah that is applicable to life, and now they're just learning hypotheticals. So they're above. Their learning Torah is so high. So you have one verse discussing the most, we might say, the lowest level of Torah study, and then leaping over all the other levels and referring to the highest level. How can that be? Same verse. The Talmud uses the same verse in these two applications, which are couldn't be farther than each other. So the answer is, you see from here, that this is touching on the essence. And on the essence, as we discussed earlier, the essence of the soul is equal by a baby who is 1 day old, and a scholar and a saintly person who's lived an entire life acquiring wisdom and knowledge. All the difference that there is between them is in the development of the powers of the soul, of the personality of the truth. But the essence of it, the spark of God, is equal by both. So therefore, what we're seeing over here is unity. The unity between, that goes through all the levels. Everybody, that there is a certain unified point where everybody's equal. That is emphasized as well in the ethics of the fathers, which, as we said before, that's the trigger for Mashiach. That's who Mashiach's soul is, the one who brings out this point in everyone, and that's what he triggers in each and every one of us. So all three aspects, the new Torah, the new world, and the new self, all of that is to be found in the first chapter of Ethics of the Fathers. Now the Rebbe goes, and he takes it a step further. He says, now let's find all these three things after we found it in the Parsha of the week, and after we've already found it in the Ethics of the Fathers that we study. Now let's find this very same idea in the very fact that it's Shabbos. Shabbos itself also contains these three levels of essence, or the essence, the triple essence, is all to be found in Shabbos. Because again, the Rebbe is speaking on Shabbos after Shavuos, and he's going to show it you that Shabbos itself is singing the song of essence. Where do we see that? We begin with Torah, again, because remember, the main point over here is the new Torah, because it's Shavuos. The Rebbe is focusing on the new Torah. From the Torah, he's going to the world, and then he's backing up and going to the soul and revealing how it applies to the soul. So, regarding Torah, one of the things about Shabbos is that it's a day that should be devoted to study Torah. One of the beauty, Shabbos is a day of rest. We don't work, and it's beautiful. We have family time. We can, just relax and get back to ourselves, and that's all great. But the main purpose of Shabbos, it says, this is a quote from Chinuch. Chinuch is from one of the early writings of the Rishonim. He says, Al Yadei Hamenucha V'Ashvisa Minyonei Olam, through resting and tranquility from worldly matters. This askas binyonei. No, I'm sorry. That's not the Chinuch's words. The Chinuch's words is that we should set in our hearts that God renewed the world. 6 days Hashem made it. And how do we do that? How do we direct our hearts to a higher spiritual consciousness? It's through detaching a bit from the distractions of life and plugging into the divine elements of life. What is the divine in the world? That's the Torah. And therefore, and we've learned already in the last class, earlier in the last episode, that the Torah was given on Shabbos. And the relationship between Torah and Shabbos. So what should we do on Shabbos? We should study Torah. Comes out that when do most people have time to unpack the Torah, to study Torah diligently, and to extract its jewels and its gems? On Shabbos. With a renewed energy, much more, because in the week you're tired. But Shabbos, you're able to study, you're able to learn, got some rest, spend Shabbos studying. So once you have renewed Torah on Shabbos, and then that trickles down into the world, why? That's always the rule. whenever there is a renewal in Torah, there will always affect a renewal in the world, because Torah is the blueprint for the world. However, okay, this is only speaking about that Shabbos is a special day for Torah. And as a consequence of that, there is a strengthening of creation as well. But now we have to link it up, not just with a newness in Torah, but we want to connect it to the specific type of innovation of Torah that's going to happen when? In the days of Mashiach. So how do we connect the redemption? Well, the Rebbe says that's simple. Shabbos is called the day of Menucha, which means rest. And we know that the future is a time of rest. And we say, Mizmar Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, let us sing a song to the day of Shabbos, from Psalm 92. So the sages interpret that to mean not just a song for our Shabbos, but let us sing the song of the future Shabbos. La'asid Lavo, to the big Shabbos that is going to come, a time that Shabbos will never end. Today's days, the way we experience Shabbos is that we have Shabbos and we go back to the week. Once we will finally reach to that higher level of spiritual consciousness, it will remain Shabbos forever. It's Yom Shekula Shabbos. It will be a day that is completely Shabbos, u'menucha l'chayei olamim, and eternal rest. We also say it during the benching, when the grace after the meal, we say the merciful one, let the merciful one bring us to the day that's completely Shabbos forever and ever. So what do we see? We see that the Messianic time era is called Shabbos. So now, if Shabbos is a day of renewed Torah learning and Torah innovation, and Shabbos is a time in which we're tapping already the futuristic light of Mashiach, so put one and one together. Put renewed Torah and the energy of Mashiach. What do you have? You have the future Torah of Mashiach being emphasized and highlighted on Shabbos. Now, in Shabbos itself, in the day of Shabbos itself, Shabbos keeps on accelerating. We know that there is an obligation to eat 3 meals on Shabbos. One Friday night, one Shabbos during the day, usually Shabbos lunch, and one before Shabbos concludes. It's called Sudat Shlishis. It's the final meal. 3 meals on Shabbat. And we know that these 3 meals correspond to our 3 patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We know that there were 3 periods of divine glory in the world. 3 glorious periods for the Jewish people. The first temple, second temple, and the third temple. So the first temple corresponds to Abraham. Second temple corresponds to Isaac, to Yitzchak. Third temple to Yaakov. So Yaakov, Jacob, he's the future. And Yaakov's energy is the third meal. The 3 meals are connected to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the third meal is Yaakov. So the Rebbe says, primarily in Shabbos itself, when are we reaching the very, very peak, most intense, powerful moment of this? It's intense menucha. When are we reaching the peaks of the rest of Shabbos? And we're touching upon the future rest. That's every Shabbos, late afternoon. It's a very exalted time. It explains in Kabbalah that the deepest divinity is accessed at that moment. The innermost of God's crown. The innermost of divine pleasure is flowing at that time. Which is the pleasure that's going to be revealed in the future days. Now, I just want to stop for a moment. The reason the Rebbe is saying this over here is because when the Rebbe was talking this, the Rebbe had come down, as I mentioned in the first class of this episode. The Rebbe surprised everybody by walking down into 770, into his shul where he would meet with the Hasidim. He came down surprised for a second gathering, a second Farbrengen on Shabbos afternoon. During this time, and he watched. It never happened. So he's talking about, so now he's saying, as we're sitting here together, we're tapping this incredible, intense energy of the future light. of the new innovation, of the Torah of the future. And therefore, the conclusion of all of this is that the innovation of Torah and consequently of the world, because the two go together, that happens on Shabbos is not just a renewal that is concurrent with current times, but rather it's tapping the future. It's the renewal of the future. It's the innovations of the future. That means on every Shabbos, a person can tap already. If you're really tuning in deeply on Shabbat, you can connect to the Torah of the future, to the lights of the new innovations of the future, which is which Torah? The Torah that has not yet been revealed. It will be revealed. Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitze, the new Torah that's going to come forth from God. So he now connected Shabbos as well to the new Torah and the new world. Now, this is true about every Shabbos. Every Shabbos has this quality. Because every Shabbos we're supposed to spend more time in the Torah. So there's a renewed dedication in Torah. And every Shabbos is connected to the future. However, he says, the Shabbos that comes after the giving of the Torah, the Shabbat that's after the giving of the Torah, the Shabbos that the Rebbe was sitting, that particular Shabbos, that Shabbos of the year, that Shabbos, this is highlighted more than any other Shabbos. Why? Because in every Shabbos, remember the Rebbe is building the entire talk over here, that there's two parts to the Torah. There's two downloads. There is the initial giving of the Torah, where God gives it all, but most of the inner content is hidden. And then there is the future revelation, where he's going to allow all the internal content to come gushing forth and be revealed. So he says like this, on a regular Shabbos, perhaps when you're experiencing newness in Torah study, you might still be caught up in the Torah of the past. Because that too is also new. Every Shabbos, there is a new download. But he says this week, since this week was the holiday of Shavuos, which on Shavuot is when God gives us the Torah, the first time God gave us the Torah on Shavuot. So the first download, the initial download number one, that happened during the week already. So when you're going back to renew the Torah on the Shabbos afterwards, it's got to be something more than you got during the week. You wouldn't just repeat the same thing again. You just had it during the week. On Tuesday, I don't know, whichever day was Shavuot, that's when you received the Torah. So now when it comes Shabbos and there needs to be something new, what's new? What's new is not the Torah of today, but the future. So he says how this Shabbos particular emphasizes the futuristic light, the new Torah, more than any Shabbos. Now, so we have the renewal of the Torah and the renewal of the world in Shabbos. But where do we have the trigger that causes it all? Which is the revelation of the essence of the soul, which is revealed through Jewish unity. Where do you have that? Well, the Rebbe says, very simple. It says that on every Shabbos, it is mandatory that people should get together in the synagogues and shuls, and they should study Torah together. In other words, private study is beautiful and it's nice. You can sit in your own living room, a dining room, take out a book and read and study. You can do that part of the day, but it is obligatory for every person to come join a public class on Shabbos. It says God told Moshe to institute public Torah study on every Shabbos. But the Rebbe says particularly Shabbos late afternoon, during the time when we do the afternoon service, the mincha, you were supposed to learn and study Torah all together at that time. Gathering people together and learning together, that's Jewish unity. Which comes from the essence of the soul being. Sometimes when we're not tapping our essence, we want to just sit in isolation. I don't want to mix with anybody else. I'm doing my own thing. But from the revelation of who we are at our deepest point, we feel an intrinsic bond between all of us. And therefore we want to sit together. Maybe my learning will be a little compromised because I can maybe do a little better when I'm learning on my own, but it's not about that. It's about the godliness of it. And I sense the godly presence much more when I'm together with a bunch of people together. So we all sit together and we learn. And he actually says that, why do we have that power? It says in general that you should gather gatherings on Shabbos to study. But particularly he says to do that late Shabbos afternoon. Well, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Shabbos afternoon, within Shabbos itself, is when the deepest pleasure of God is revealed, the deepest keter is revealed, futuristic light, which in general, that means the essence of everything is then revealed. So when the essence of the soul is then revealed, that's what calls for the unity. That's what brings us together. Okay. So now that we found these 3 points in the parsha, we found these 3 points in the ethics of the fathers. We found these 3 elements, the essential, the revelation of essence, also in Shabbos. He says, and all of that was true all the time. What the Rebbe is talking about, the Rebbe is leading all this up to the specific Shabbos that the Rebbe himself came down to spend with the Hasidim. The way I see it, it's clear to me. The Rebbe is then already unlocking the beginning of unlocking of the new Torah of the future. We haven't yet fully seen it, but we were already getting a taste from it. When did the Rebbe do it? He did it on that Shabbos. That's why he says, as much as this is emphasized till now, every year, this was said in 1991, as much as this was true in 1990, and it was true in 1989, and it was true on the Shabbos after Shavuos in 1988, and so you can go back all the way to the giving of the Torah. This was always the quality of this particular powerful Shabbos, the Shabbos after Shavuos. But on this year, he says, it's on off the charts. It's on a level way beyond anything else. Why? So he says, well, we have to preface, first of all, how close we are to the Messianic age. He says we've already spoken many times that according to all the signs that the sages have given regarding the end times, okay, sages have given signs on how you know it's going to be the end time. Based on all those signs that the sages say, you can check off and say that every single one of those predictions have come true in our generation. So the Rebbe says, there is no question. This is the generation of the redemption. And he points it very clear. This is the last generation of exile, and our generation is the first generation of redemption. Because take a look in the Talmud, it gives you all the prophetic statements of what the world is going to look like. Go outside, look out the window and see what the world looks like, and you can actually check it off. We did a class a few weeks ago. You can look about I forgot, it was Parshas Metzora, about 7-8 weeks ago, where I went through those signs and we took a look and we see how literally all these things are happening today. But he says, don't just take my word for it, the Rebbe. He says, my father-in-law, my saintly father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, had already said in 1940, after the Second World War, that we're so close. So but he made a precondition. He says, if we do tshuva, if we do repentance, the redemption will come. So the Rebbe says, okay, my father-in-law already said we're very close, but he still made a condition. We still need a tshuva. What do you see first of all, from what my father-in-law said? He said we finished all the work. And basically, the Friediger Rebbe's expression, the previous Rebbe's, Lubavitch Rebbe's expression was, we've done everything to be ready for the Messianic revelation. The only thing we need to do is polish the buttons. It's like what soldiers do when they put on their uniforms. Everything is done, but then they give a little oiling of the buttons so that it should sparkle. So basically what the Friediger Rebbe was saying, that the work that humanity needed to do to prepare for the great divine Messianic revelation, everything was done. Now we just need only the tiny little last and final finishing touch. So the Rebbe said, if this was said over 40 years ago, before we even had the explosion of Jewish observance and thousands of Jews returning to their ways of their father, which The Rebbe started this revolution. He sent his emissaries across the whole world. And the Rebbe says it's already 40 years after my father-in-law said this, because father-in-law passed away in 1950. And the Rebbe became Rebbe. And he took his Hasidim, spread them to chase down every single Jew and get him to do a mitzvah. Many of them returned to a life of observance. And therefore, for sure, if there was the polishing of the buttons that were left over to do, we've got that done already. So there is no question. Not only that, we've also spread the teachings of the esoteric teachings, Hasidus, the deepest teaching, which is also a precursor and a necessity in order to herald in the redemption. We've done all this already. So for sure, in which we even passed he emphasized the number 40. Because 40 is a number, sages say that you don't get your teacher until 40 years. So what his Rebbe is basically saying, my father-in-law was already at the redemption at his day, but we were still lagging behind. But since we're already studying his teachings for 40 years, by now we should open our eyes and see already, and we get it already. So we're also already there. There is no question, the Rebbe says. The Rebbe is now taking the temperature of the world. He says, there is no question that the world is ready for the Messianic age. Now, the Rebbe doesn't mean that there isn't any dark stuff in the world. He just said earlier that one of the predictions regarding Mashiach is that the world is going to be so many things in the world will be totally a wreck, will be completely disintegrated. Like we're watching society falling apart by the seams right now. But that doesn't mean that the goodness that we created, all the goodness that was done, all the mitzvahs that were done, both are true simultaneously. A crumbling world on one side and a very strong, solid, built-up, internal godly world that we created by all the pieces of the puzzles of the Torah observance. So the Rebbe says, therefore, we are so close to the redemption. So now this becomes even more highlighted on this Shabbat. This becomes even more emphasized, he continues, in this particular year. Now, if you're saying this generation, what's so different between 1990 and 1991? Why celebrate 1991? So the Rebbe says, now, by the way, even though now we're way after 1991, if anything, we're after and farther. We're not after and lower. We didn't regress. There's no regression. We're always moving forward. So what the Rebbe is really saying is we reached a certain milestone, and therefore now it's like off the charts messianic energies for whoever wants to open their eyes and live in that zone. It's up to us to move into that zone. Fine. You can choose to live in darkness, or you can choose to live in the zone of redemption. That's a choice that every person's got to make. So he says, what's so special about this year, 1991? In Hebrew, the year 1991 was the year 5751, 5,751 to creation. In Hebrew, to say 57, you spell the word Taf Shin Nun Aleph. That's the numbers, Taf, which the Rebbe says, if you rearrange those letters, you get the word Tinaseh. Tinaseh means will be elevated. And it's a word that is biblical, referring to the Messianic times. The kingdom of Mashiach will be elevated. King David's throne, the Davidic kingdom will be elevated. So the Rebbe says the word that spells this year is actually the same word the Torah uses for the elevation of Mashiach's kingdom. So this is the year to elevate the Mashiach and bring him into the spotlight. Wow. And if you take these very same letters, the Rebbe gave it an acronym, which stands for this year, Hashana Tia, when it's Tafshin Nun Aleph, Tia Shnas Arenu Neflois. It will be a year where you will see wonders. That's referring to the Mashiach times. There's a verse that says, like as the days you went out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. So the Rebbe says this year, again, he's not referring to this year, he's referring to 1991, is the year that I will show you wonders. By the way, that's the year, as I told you, the internet was released. That's the year that the Rebbe says a very great sign of Mashiach happened that year. He says, beginning with the wonders that we've already seen already. Now, the Rebbe is talking in the month of June. In the months of leading up to January, November, December, the entire world was in suspended, that it was holding its breath. Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. This was the first Persian Gulf War. People were terrified, and he threatened to gas, to throw chemical weapons, that if America and the Allies try to take him out from Kuwait, he's going to fight back by lodging chemical warheads to Israel. Israel was in panic mode because the Israeli intelligence knew that he has such weapons. It was frightening. The Rebbe then kept on saying, don't be afraid. And the Rebbe pointed to a midrash that says the year that the Mashiach will reveal himself, the year that the Mashiach will reveal himself, there will be, all the nations will be at edge because there will be a threat of a war. And it particularly says the king of Persia and the Arabian king will be fighting with each other. So the Rebbe was learning that Kuwait was the Arabian king and Persia was Iraq, even though Persia is Iran. But the Rebbe says that certain swaths of Iraq was also part of ancient Persia. And therefore, when it says the king of Persia and the king of Arabia are skirmishing one with each other, which a prediction that the Midrash gave 2,000 years ago, it's going to happen right at the time of the revelation of Mashiach, and the whole world is scared, and the Jews are panicking. Be afraid. Everything that I am doing, I'm doing only for your sake. Your time of your redemption has arrived. So the Rebbe says, and here's very powerful. He says he said in June, this midrash has already been fulfilled this year. Because we all know in the end, America, the Allies, took out Saddam Hussein. At that time, they didn't kill him. He wasn't yet captured. That was after the second ruling. But they completely humiliated him. They completely destroyed all of his power. And not only that, he did not succeed, and there was not one chemical weapon. 39 Scuds were hit Israel, but there was hardly any damage. It was literally miraculous. A Scud is almost the size of a school bus coming at a building. Many buildings were hit, and yet miraculously, it was literally the craziest miracles. People came out from the apartment buildings unscathed. One such missile hit an American base, and I forgot already how many people were killed. But the Rebbe said Israel is a safe place. And therefore, these missiles were hitting, and it was unbelievable. So the Rebbe says, that's the wonders. You've seen it with your eyes. And that's an indication that it has been already fulfilled, the Messianic, what the Midrash is saying, that this is the year that Mashiach will reveal himself. And this has happened already. My personal opinion, the Rebbe then, that year, accepted when the Hasidim were saying he's Mashiach, and the Rebbe spoke such Torah like he's telling us over here. So the Rebbe is referring to himself and what happened. Now, even though one will ask, hold it, we're still living in darkness. Yeah. Mashiach is revealed. That doesn't mean the redemption is here yet. Now the job for Mashiach to bring the redemption. But Mashiach revealed. And then you're going to ask, but hold it, the Rebbe already passed away in 1994. My personal answer, the Midrash tells us in a bunch of places, Mashiach will be revealed, he will be concealed, and he will be revealed again. The fact that we're going through a period of concealment doesn't scare me at all. I mean, it bothers me, but it's not something that says, okay. It's clear to me that when the Rebbe said this has already been fulfilled, it has already been fulfilled. It's not a question. Now the Rebbe continues, specifically since we're holding at the time of the giving of the Torah. And within this year, we're holding at the time of the giving of the Torah. And when in the 12 days in the Tashlumim, and particularly on the holiday of Shavuos, there's a special connection to the redemption, because the sages say regarding Shavuos that everybody agrees that on Shavuos you have to also give your body enjoyment. There's a statement of the sages that other holidays a person has a choice. You can either celebrate it in a physical way, or you can celebrate it in a spiritual way. There is an opinion that way, that you don't have to treat the holiday in a way that you're celebrating it physically. If you enjoy spirituality, you don't have to eat meals. There's an opinion that way. It's not accepted. According to halacha, you're supposed to have physical meals but there is an opinion. The sages say everybody agrees that that's referring to other holidays. But Shavuot, since it's such a great holiday, the giving of the Torah, you must also physically enjoy the holiday. Okay. They use the words be'inon nami lachem. You also need, the Rebbe, however, found, because the Rebbe is so obsessed with Mashiach, because this is his business, the Rebbe found a play on the words by one of the rabbis, one of the great Hasidic masters from the students of the early third generation, Rav Mordechai of the Dvar. I think he's the third generation of Hasidic masters. And in his teaching, he writes on the words, Be'inon nami lachem. He says, he plays on the words. Be'inon doesn't mean you need to. Usually it means be'inon, you need. Be'inon means we pray. In Aramaic, be'inon means to pray. Nami lachem, he says the words nami lachem is the same numeric value as end times, as the Hebrew word kates, which means end times. So that means that everybody agrees that on Shavuos, what is supposed to be present in our mind, we should be praying for the redemption. We should be praying for the kates. So since Shavuos is such an opportune time for the kates, for the redemption to happen, so since now we're holding on the Shabbos after the kates of Shavuos, after it's Shabbos Parshas Naso. Which parsha? The parsha of Naso. Which Naso, he says, is the insides words of the word Tinaseh. Tinaseh means to elevate, Mashiach's kingdom. And this is the Shabbos that has the words Naso, which is the most letters of that word. So it contains within it the elevation of Mashiach. And in the year, which is the year of Arenu Neflos, I will show you wonders. So the conclusion to the Rebbe is that this is the time that is the most opportune for the new Torah to be downloaded, which will then cause the new heaven and the new earth that I am making. Not only God in the future, but that it's happening already now. That's the point. And to emphasize this more, he says, the fact that we are sitting over here now at the third meal, the Rebbe says that's the reason for this third. The Rebbe is explaining the reason for this surprise Farbrengen. The Rebbe says, you know what this is? Because I see it. I'm sorry if this is too much for some people. But to me, like Moshe came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets, surprise, Moshe just came down the mountain. The Rebbe, surprised. It never happened. The Rebbe would always let people know that he's coming. More than that, his secretaries would walk him down. He would come. The secretaries weren't even there. Everybody was home. The Rebbe walked down surprised with a washing cup, surprise Farbrengen. And he says, this Farbrengen is in commemoration of the new Torah that's supposed to happen on this Shabbos. So I'm reading a little bit more in the lines that the Rebbe is coming down already with the key, unlocking that new Torah with this talk that he's giving us over here, giving us insight, giving us understanding of what the new Torah is all about. Especially since it's the third meal, the Rebbe says, the time that is the most connected. That's why we're celebrating. And what are we going to do? At the end of the meal, we're going to do the grace after the meal, and then we're going to do by grace after the meal. If you're supposed to do it whenever you're doing it with 10 people, you're supposed to do it on a cup of wine, and it's called the cup of blessing. Now the Rebbe's custom was that he would be the one who would lift the cup up, and he would lead the benching. Afterwards, he only did this on holidays. Afterwards, he would save the cup for the Havdalah services, and then he would stand for hours and he would pour. They would sing, and thousands of people would pass by, and he would be giving them from this blessed wine. And people saw this as miraculous. Miracles were happening. Miracles literally were flowing under the table. It was unbelievable. You can watch it online. Put it, Kaishal Bracha, Lubavitcher Rebbe. You'll see videos, and it's beautiful. So the Rebbe is saying, well, since we're going to distribute Kaishal Bracha, now, Kaishal Bracha, the Rebbe says, is particularly connected to who? to Mashiach. It's related to Mashiach. Why? Because the sages tell us that in the time of the redemption, there is going to be a big feast. And that's going to be after the resurrection. And all the righteous people are going to come back. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. It's going to come time to saying the grace after the meal. We're going to have to honor one person to lead it by holding that cup and lead the whole assembly, which is going to be everybody in this bench. They're going to honor Abraham, Avram, and Avram is going to decline. He's going to say, "I'm not worthy." He's going to give a reason. They're going to honor Isaac. Isaac is going to decline. Jacob. So they're going to pass the cup around until it comes to Mashiach. It says David Malchus Mashiach. It says David. You can read it as David of the past, or you can read it as David Malchus Mashiach. The Rebbe is implying that it's referring to Mashiach. And Mashiach will say, "I'll take the cup. It's worthy for me to lift this cup up." And that's why King David is the one who says, "Kais Yeshua is Esa, a cup of salvation I raise." So Mashiach will raise that cup. So the Rebbe says, since now we are sitting together and we're going to bench with that cup, he's saying it's referring to, it's connected to, it's tapping already the blessings, the flow of the future. Mashiach's light. And he also adds in the footnotes, amazing, the Rebbe adds in the footnote, that not only did we have the benching, which relates to Mashiach, but we also sang the songs of all the Chabad masters. You know, the Chabad Rebbeim each have a song associated with them. Many of them were composers. Very deep Hasidic melodies. The Rebbe had a custom that at the end of every holiday, he would say that they should mention each one of these great saintly people and sing their song. And thousands of Hasidim together would chant the song, and it would be very powerful. So the Rebbe says, especially since we sang all those songs, which are 9 altogether, the Baal Shem Tov, whatever, there's a calculation for 9, I'm not going to get into it, 9. And that leads us to the 10th song. What's the 10th song? The 10th song is the song of Mashiach. And the Rebbe goes through the names of all the Rebbes, and he says, the first song, the Rebbe, the second, and then he says the third Rebbe, whose name is, he writes this out of it, whose name is Menachem Mendel. The Rebbe carries that same name. And the Rebbe says, well, that's the name of Mashiach. Menachem Mendel is the name of Mashiach. And then my father-in-law, whose father-in-law's name is Yosef Yitzchak, whose name is also connected to the redemption. He differentiates. By his father-in-law, he says the name is connected to redemption, and by the Tzemach Tzedek, who carries the name Menachem Mendel, the Rebbe says, well, that's the name of Mashiach. Like the sages say that Mashiach's name is Menachem. And one of the names of Mashiach is Tzedek, which Tzedek is the same numeric value as the word Mendel. Wild. So since we've done that already, he says, there's no question that we're holding already in the Messianic experience. Bottom line, what are we supposed to derive of all of this? What's his conclusion? Since we're holding in such an elevated time, and for the revelation of the new Torah, so therefore, what should we do about it? Again, the Rebbe always hands it back to us. The key to redemption is in your hands. What is he saying? That we should all start preparing ourselves to receive this new Torah. The new Torah is already in Mashiach's hands. He's ready to give it. We still need to put ourselves a little together to prepare for it. How do you prepare for it? The Rebbe says you prepare for it by innovating in Torah as much as you can. That each and every one of us should study Torah with diligence. Study and study with enjoyment, with pleasure. So when you learn something with pleasure, what that causes innovation. So each and every one of us should study both the law of the Torah and the esoteric parts of the Torah. And we should study it with great diligence so that we can be preparing ourselves to receive the ultimate new Torah that is revealed through Mashiach, and so on and so forth. And he says, in addition, every person should accept upon themselves that when they say ethics of the fathers during the summer months, don't just say it, but learn it, and take particularly one Mishnah that you should learn in great depth. And let it be the will, the Rebbe concludes in chapter 15, that just from speaking about this, and just from people accepting upon themselves these good acceptances, to study Torah with a whole new excitement, let this already bring us instantly to the revelation of the new Torah of Mashiach through Mashiach. And Moshe is going to be there, Moshe who received the Torah, and Aaron the high priest, is also going to be there. and the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, and all of our Rebbes, all the Chabad Rebbeim, well, up to my father-in-law, is going to all return here physically, together with all the other tzaddikim, together with all the saintly people, and all the leaders of the Jewish people, and all of Israel, everybody, from all the generations. Everybody's going to be resurrected and come back, and when they're going to come back singing, together with all the people that are in our generation, in a way that their souls are in their bodies without them having to die. In other words, the Rebbe was giving a blessing that all the people that are alive now should already merit to see the full redemption, so they shouldn't, God forbid, have to pass away. Sadly, that part, a lot of people passed away since 1991 until today. But the Rebbe was hoping that we can expedite things. See, he's giving it in our hands. The one thing he didn't control is the redemption. He couldn't control it. It's up to us. He can inspire us. He can drive us. He can say, listen, everything is ready. I'm here. The Torah is here. Everything is ready. But you guys gotta get your act together. And this is what he's inspiring us from week to week. But he says, let it be that we can go immediately into this amazing time, and all of us can hear Torah Chadasha, the new Torah, in our holy land, in Jerusalem, the holy city, on the holy mountain, in the temple, in the Holy of Holies, directly from on top of the cover of the Holy Ark, from between the two cherubs. We can hear the godly download of new Torah. And the main thing that all of this should happen instantly, miyad, which is the word miyad, as we discussed already in the earlier class, is acronym for Moshe, which is referring to Moses, Yisrael, Yud is Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, and Dalet stands for David Malka Mashiach. And let this all be in the literal sense, in a way that we can touch it tangibly below 10 hand breaths, which means it should happen not in some metaphysical state. It has to appear in the physical, and let it be mamish, let it be now. What a special upbringing. Okay, tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, we will start the next one, episode number 7.